Hi, and welcome to Prepping Essentials. Just popped into water the polytunnel and the raised beds. The weather this year has been really crazy. These tomatoes aren't really liking this sun out here. They are getting dried out. But the subject of watering, I've run out of water in the containers in the polytunnel, so I've just rigged up a little hose pipe here in the cabin just to pump water into those and fill those up ready for next time. So I thought I'd have a quick cup of coffee, and this has got me thinking about lessons learned, so I think I might just do a little video on the subject of water. So, hi, here we are back in the cabin with another lessons learned video. I had a few comments on my previous videos, mainly around the audio quality. I really do apologise for that. I did assume, naively I guess, that sitting in the cabin it will be sufficiently loud for you to be able to hear me. I have got a little clip-on mic coming, so hopefully things will improve, so just bear with me please. This video was inspired by me coming down to water the polytunnel and the raised beds. Weather's been horrendously weird and unusually hot for the UK. In fact, tomorrow, which is Friday, it's forecast 37 degrees. That's 100 for you guys across in the States. And while that might not sound very hot to many people around the world, I know when I was in the Gulf, we were regularly getting high 40s and over 50s in some cases. It is hot here in the UK. It's not often that we get high 30s, let alone 37. But we have this year. We've had some really bizarre temperatures, bizarre winds, bizarre rain. So fighting with keeping on top of the watering, I thought I'd do a lessons learned on the subject of watering, or water. People take water for granted. Even I, as a prepper, occasionally take water for granted. It's easy to get lulled into that false sense of security. You're in the home, all you need to do is just turn the tap on, and out comes the water. Once you start having interruptions to the water supply, or if you, as I have, try to live off-grid, the reality of water and its importance and its difficulty in supply off-grid rapidly becomes apparent. I know that quite a while back now I spent 2 years living on a canal boat. Clearly that's off-grid, it's not connected to the mains water supply, and I had an onboard tank. I forget how many litres were in that. I'm guessing around 150 litres. Which might sound a lot, but actually it's not. And I regularly, every week, sometimes more than once a week, found myself having to top up those water tanks. And similarly, when you go off grid into a cabin, as I've built here on my land, again, water becomes a key issue. Without a source of water, and reliable water, I couldn't sit here in the cabin and enjoy a nice cup of coffee. And similarly, if I'm trying to grow plants in the garden or the polytunnel, they're not going to last long without water. And if you've watched my previous videos on the garden and the polytunnel, you'll know that I've fallen foul numerous times on not being able to supply sufficient water to the plants. Now, whether that's because I was lacking in the frequency of coming down, I did think that every second day would be sufficient, but the weather caught me out dramatically on many occasions, and I'd come down and find that the plants had been scorched and dried out and either wilted or died in some cases, or whether that's just availability of water. We've had some bizarre weather this year. We've had long periods of drought. I've not been able to collect sufficient water. I've even had to bring cans of water in from the house to try and keep on top of the watering. So water is one of those essentials in life for both humans and plants. It's quite surprising how much the average person does get through. I mean, to survive, you need 3 litres of water a day, so that's 3/4 of a gallon. So that's just drinking water. Clearly, statistics vary from country to country, and indeed here in the UK from region to region. But on average, the average person uses 160 litres, that's 35 gallons of water every single day. 84% of this just goes straight down the drain through toilets, baths, showers, sinks and washing machines. We're actually only drinking 4% of that water. So that's an awful lot of water per person per day. So you start multiplying up the number of people in your household, you soon get into some seriously big figures. The amount of water we get through is quite significant, and it's not until you actually go off grid and start having to source that water and store that water that you suddenly realise it's not quite as simple a process as you might imagine. So whilst the grid is up and everything's normal, even in the recent pandemic, coronavirus, major problem from a health perspective and from an economic perspective, it's not disrupted the water supply. You take some other potential events, so whether that's civil disorder or whether that's a war and EMP hitting the grid and all of the electric goes off, whatever it happens to be, there is a potential to lose the mains water supply, and without a suitable source of safe water, you would very quickly be in dire straits. You can only go for 3 days without water at 3 litres a day just for drinking. So it is a serious subject, and it's something that I've tried to take care of as part of my preps for when something hits the fan, as well of course of trying to make provision for coming off grid in the cabin down here on the land. So I have done lots of previous videos on the subject of water, and there are several elements to that, first of which is finding a water supply outside of your mains water tap. Now, as you look around your normal environment, whether that's rural or urban, there are lots of sources for water. It is pretty much everywhere in most countries, but clearly it's not always safe to drink unless you're way up in a mountain range somewhere and you've got a nice fresh mountain spring or a glacier fed river. Anything other than that, really, you can't just drink it straight from the water source. So it is worth taking a look around your environment, wherever you happen to live, or wherever you happen to think that you will bug out to or set up your homestead. It is worth considering availability of water. And also bear in mind, just because there's water there today doesn't necessarily mean there'll be water there tomorrow. Classic example of that, I have a drainage ditch that runs out the back. It's literally just out of the door there, and that is supposed to be a permanent source of water. It's supposed to be at least part filled throughout the entire year. Now certainly through the winter and into the spring that was the case, but as we've gone into the summer, I've watched the water level drop dramatically and whilst there is still some in the bottom of the drainage ditch, it's more mud than it is water. Similarly, you remember on a previous video, I dug out a pond. The idea was that I would have multiples of thousands of litres or hundreds of gallons of water available in that pond. But again, having dug out the pond, I rapidly found out that it doesn't hold water all the way through. Indeed, as soon as we started getting into spring, I found that there was no water. It had just simply drained away through the ground. So identifying source of water that's going to be reliable is the most important starting point, really. Where are you going to get your water from if something hits the fan? In your urban environment and in the home, whilst supplies are up, it does make sense to put some water aside in stored form. At home, I've got a couple of 100 litre water canisters. I've got some in varying sizes from kind of 10 litres upwards, and then I've got some larger tanks that take I think it's 300 litres of water, so we're getting on for 100 gallons in those. Now they're just literally straight filled from the tap, and the water will sit in those for quite an extended period of time. It will lose its, let's say, active properties, its oxygenation levels, the longer it sits in those tanks without being moved. But you can just decant into another one and it kind of refreshes. So you can leave water in there for quite some time. I would say several months, if not up to a year, without having to worry too much about it. So out of the tap, it will already be pre-treated, so it should be safe to drink straight out of those containers. Which kind of brings me to the next issue of water. Just because you do have some, doesn't necessarily it's going to be safe to drink for extended periods of time. So you need to find some way of cleaning that water up so it is suitable for drinking. And depending where you get your water source from, there are a couple of issues around that. Water from a natural source, such as a pond or a river or a lake, will have some kind of sediment and potentially other harmful things in it. You'll get runoff from crop fields, so there could be chemicals in there. Even from the normal urban environment, water that drains away into the rivers will contain some contaminants. You'll also get more severe contaminants in the form of bacteria and viruses. They're occurring naturally in the environment. They're passed into the water source from animals when they defecate into the environment, and just through nature itself, all water will contain something if it's outside in the natural environment. So you need to be able to clean up that water. There are two stages to that. You talk about filtering the water, and then you talk about purifying the water to make it safe to drink. Again, there are lots of ways of doing this. I have done lots of previous videos on the subject of filtering and purifying your water, and I have several solutions available to me. The only difference between them really is the quantity of water that those cleaning systems can process and the degree to which they will purify the water. So in terms of filtration, there are lots of different ways you can do it. You can buy off-the-shelf canvas or fabric filters. There's a specific thing used by people who go camping and hiking. I forget the name of it now. I will pop it in the video at some point. But it's essentially a little bag. You pour the water in the top of the bag and it passes through the fabric of the bag itself, and clean filtered water comes out the bottom that you can capture. You can take that a stage further and you can do filtration through natural materials such as sand, gravel, carbon. Indeed, I have done a video on how you can do that, just using a simple 2-bucket system. The top bucket has 3 stages of filtration in it. You've got a layer of sand, a layer of gravel, and a layer of carbon. Fill the top bucket with your dirty water. It passes through those 3 different materials into the bottom bucket, just gravity fed, and it will clean the water as it passes through. So the bucket at the bottom, you will end up with clean drinking water. Having said that, those 3-stage filters will filter out the majority of the particulate matter that's in there. They will reduce bad taste and bad odour, but they won't filter out bacteria or virus. For that you need something a little bit more sophisticated. So in terms of converting that filtered water into water that you can rely on to be safe to drink, there are a number of different ways of purifying. One of those is a filtration system, and again there are a couple of these on the market. I'll pop some video clips or some links in to previous videos where you can take a look at those. But the main ones really are these small filtration units that are designed for personal use. So those are things you might, if you Google on the internet, life straw, you'll see that there's a little tube kind of filter. It's very, very simple. Stick one end in the water, stick the other end in your mouth, suck, and the water filters and is purified as it passes through the filtration system into your mouth. There is a kind of spin-off from that. Some of the bigger systems will use a pump so that you can actually pump larger volumes of water and fill up your water bottles or indeed water tanks, depending on how big the pump system is. From a more high volume way of purifying the water, there's a very nice gravity fed ceramic filter system. The most popular and recommended one of those is something called the Burkefield or Berkey filtration system. It's a bit similar to the one I described earlier, where you have 2 buckets or canisters stacked on top of each other. In the top canister you have some ceramic candle shaped filters which screw thread connect into the top canister, and you fill the top canister with water to the height of the ceramic filters. The water goes through some kind of osmosis effect through the ceramic filter into the centre, down, and passes through into the canister or the bucket underneath. Now those will filter out harmful bacteria and virus. They say 99.9% because nothing in life is 100% guaranteed, but they're used all over the world. Indeed, in a previous life I used to work for government overseas. Every staff member had one of those in their house. Indeed, in some parts of the world more than one, because you needed to process more bigger volumes of water. So yeah, health organisations, governments, aid agencies all use those, have done for decades, so in all parts of the world. So you can be pretty sure that those systems will both filter and purify. Though having said that, I wouldn't put river or pond water into those systems. You'll just reduce the life of the filters because it will clog up all of the pores in the filter and you'll end up changing them. And they're bloody expensive. They're about £20. So what's that in dollars? $33, something like that, per candle filter. And most of these systems take at least 2, sometimes 3, so the cost can soon rack up. But they are excellent. You can rinse them off and wash them to extend their life. They'll last, depending on where you are and the kind of water you're filtering, anywhere from 2 years upwards before you need to change them. Other methods of purifying your water, there are quite a few. Chemical treatment is one of those. Essentially, chemical treatment is what happens in your normal tap water. The water company will put chlorine into the water, bleach for want of a better word, in the processing plant before it's pumped through the pipes to your house. Depending on where you are in the world and the water that's available, the chlorine levels will vary. So you can do a similar kind of thing yourself. You can add pure bleach, not the perfumed variety you get for your toilets and bathrooms. You can put pure bleach into your water. If I remember, I'll put a little ratio somewhere in the video as to how much bleach per litre or gallon of water you need. Or you can more simply just buy purification tablets, readily available on the internet, Amazon, eBay, places like that. Hiking and camping supply shops sell them. They normally come in a standard tablet size. One tablet does 1 litre of water. You simply throw it in the water, let it sit for half an hour, give it a bit of a shake, and you can drink the water. Does kill bacteria and viruses, doesn't take away the smell or taste that you might find in raw water that you're procuring from natural sources. But in terms of being able to use it for drinking or cooking, it's absolutely fine. On a more technical note, you can treat the water with ultraviolet. Excuse me. You'll see that a lot for people who keep fish in aquatic tanks. They'll use UV filters as part of their filtration system to keep the water clean. And you can buy very, very small scale, or indeed very, very industrial scale UV light sources to do that. But the most tried and tested way, once you've filtered your water and you've got it so that it's reduced the amount of particulate matter, the most simple and safest way is to boil that water. Bring it to the boil and keep it on a rolling boil for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and that will kill any harmful bacteria that's in there. The chickens in my neighbour's garden, I think they weren't feeding because they're making a right noise, but it's nice to hear. It's all part of the natural environment. Yeah, so lots of different ways to filter and to purify your water, and as I edit the video I'll throw in a few different links. Since you're already on the channel, one of the easiest ways to get some more background information is to just scroll through the video listings on the channel, and you'll see some of these titles pop up there, and you'll get a lot of information about finding, filtering, purifying water and how to store it in those videos. For your off-grid situation, you are going to need stored water or a ready supply of natural water. For me, with the cabin on my land, one of the early things I did do was to set up a rainwater harvesting system, because the rainwater coming straight from the sky is actually as clean as it gets. However, having said that, you are going to run into problems once you start to capture that water and store that water. And indeed, as I've gone through my little cabin build journey and got my rainwater harvesting system set up, I have come across a few issues that now I've got a police car or an ambulance going by in the distance. I have found a few issues myself, and I'll run through a few of those with you now. The system itself is pretty easy, and I'll crop some kind of video clip into this when I do the editing. But essentially, rain falls from the sky onto the roof, into the guttering. It then disappears off through the guttering to a storage tank. Now, I've got currently 2 times 1,000 litre IBC containers. just at the side of the cabin under a little cover. You'll know from previous videos that I've set up a rainwater harvesting system on the cabin roof. It wraps all the way around the cabin and feeds into this boxed in section at the end of the cabin. Water comes down through a little filter in the gutter and then drops into these tanks, which are 1,000 litres each. As you can see, it's a little bit shy of the top, but the 1,000 litre mark is actually here where the water line is now. So when they're full, they're actually containing, I don't know, around about 1,100 litres each or thereabouts, and then that just pipes out into the cabin for the sink and the shower. Once that rain has dropped out of the sky, the contamination process will invariably start. As it hits the roof, it's going to pick up any debris that is on the roof, whether that's leaves falling from trees. Luckily I put my cabin so that it didn't have any trees overhanging it for that reason. But invariably, as I've discovered, bird life and other wildlife for some reason find the roof extremely attractive, whether that's a vantage point so they can keep an eye out for predators, or just somewhere to hang out and chit chat with their fellow birds and animals. Whatever the reason, they will definitely sit on the roof. And then animals being animals, they're not going to get up and go to the toilet, they're just going to go to the toilet there on the roof. So you are going to get lots of contamination potentially coming off the rainwater as it runs down the roof into the gutter and then into the tanks. You can filter the water coming through the gutter in and down into the tanks. I have got a filter on the collection point where the gutters meet above the IBC tanks, but to be honest, I don't think you can get a fine enough mesh to filter out all of the debris. You are going to find that the debris builds up in the filters, and it doesn't take long to do that. You get a couple of days of rain and you'll find that they become clogged up, they overflow, and instead of the water going in your tanks, it's just overflowing outside of the tanks. Similarly, once the water goes in the tanks and it's sitting there for an extended period of time, if it's left exposed to the sun, the sunlight and the water will start to have an effect where algae will start to build up in the tanks. Quite where that comes from, I have no idea. I'm not a botanist, but it just does. You try leaving some water in a bottle outside or on your windowsill, revisit it a few days later and you'll start to see discoloration in the water, and if you leave it long enough, you will see the green of the algae starting to grow in there. So to try and prevent that, I've boxed in my tanks. You can get coloured plastic tanks which help, or you can spray paint the outside of the tanks in a dark colour to try and help, but really just get them out of the sunlight to try and prevent that from happening. So even though the rainwater itself is pure, it doesn't take long in the capturing process and the storage process for it to become contaminated. So with that in mind, there's a couple of options you can do. You can chemically treat the water to make it like the tap water in your house, but the safest solution is to make sure that even though you've collected what was pure clean water, have some method of purifying it again once you come to the point of drinking it. So as the water comes out of my taps, if it's for my cup of coffee, or if I just want to drink some water, then I will boil that. Or, as you've seen in a previous video, I have one of those ceramic water filter tanks just set up over there, actually out of shot on the worktop. So I can throw, I think it holds about a gallon in the top tank. I can throw the water out of my sink tap, it's come from my rainwater tanks, into that ceramic filter tank, and I know that I've got clean water that's safe to drink on tap in that tank. Having said that though, most of the water I do drink is in this form. It's in coffee form, so it's getting filtered and purified to death through the ceramic filter, and then again it's getting purified through boiling in the kettle. So I don't think there's much left to say really on the subject of water, other than to bear in mind that whatever the crisis might be, it's a reality that at some point you're going to need to find and clean your own water. So while the going is good and we've still got water coming through the main grid system into our taps, put some aside. Get some plastic canisters and fill those up and put them somewhere where it's cool and dark, out of the way, so you have an immediate backup supply of water. Have a look back through my previous videos and you'll see lots of methods for storing water and potential sources even in your home. If you know the grid's going down, fill the bath. You can actually get, I think they're called bath bobs or something like that. It's a big plastic bag, essentially. You lie it inside your bath and fill it up with a hose, and it expands to the size of your bath, and I don't know how many gallons the average bath holds, but it's quite substantial. The water tank in your home, whether that's for your heating system or your drinking water system. If the taps stop, there's a good chance you'll have a tank somewhere in your home that will have clean water in it that you can use. Have a little think before the crisis hits. Where can you get your water from, inside the home or outside the home in your local area, and what method would you use to filter that and to purify that water? Last thing before I close on the subject of water, don't underestimate the difficulty that you will have when you are sourcing your water. As soon as you step outside your door to go and find it and collect it, you are going to have to bring it back again. And water, as I know from bitter experience, is very heavy. 1 litre of water weighs 1 kilogram. So just bear that in mind when it comes to thinking about where you're going to get your water from. Because if you're going to cover any distance, if you've got to walk for even 100 metres, let alone a mile or more, to fill your can of water, just bear in mind that every litre of water that you gather does weigh 1 kilogram. I'm regularly throwing around canisters that hold 20 litres, so that's 20 kilograms. Indeed, the ones you saw today, they were all 10 or 20 litre canisters. It doesn't take long, no matter how good shape you're in, and I'm not, it doesn't take long for the old muscles to start hurting. So it's all right for me moving from the cabin to the polytunnel. I don't know where it is in metres, probably about 20-30 metres, no more than that. Carrying 20 or 40 kilos of water. You try doing that for a mile. It's going to become a chore very quickly, and indeed it might be impossible for some people to actually physically carry 20 litres of water a mile back to their home. And then if you think again about how much water you get through, 3 litres of drinking water per day, that 20 litre canister of water, it ain't going to last you very long. So do have a little bit of a think about that, and hopefully this will have been a thought-provoking exercise for you. And do take the time to have a look back through the channel videos, because there are lots of videos on the subject of water, and indeed on the internet. I mean, some people have put out some remarkable videos on the subject of water. So do a little bit of research, because one day, and you don't know when it's going to happen, because these things just have a habit of arriving unannounced, one day the water taps might not flow when you turn them on. Well, that's it for this video. I hope there was something in there that was of interest to you. If you did like the video, please do click on the like button. Also feel free to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. As always, welcome any comments, questions or suggestions you might have. How did you find the video? Is there anything that should have been in there that wasn't? Just let me know in the comments section below. But for now, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.